Goedemiddag allemaal. Good afternoon, everyone. I am back on stage. But this time we will be navigating the disruptions of the supply chain with a brilliant, very diverse trio here. Please, I'll let each of them introduce what you do, your company, what you love about your company, and we'll get started.
Awesome. My name is Anna. I am the CEO and co-founder of NOCA Mobility, and we are building the digital infrastructure for supply chain and procurement management in micromobility, and we very much are focusing on cycling first. What I love about our company is that we are very young, we're very agile, and basically I get to say what we do, so that's great.
Avrath, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Avrath Chada. I'm a mechanical and chemical engineer, and I work for TVS Motors, one of the largest two-wheeler producers in the world. We make around 4 million motorcycles, scooters, and also the three-wheelers, the Indian tuk-tuks. We have quite some business also in Europe. We have acquired a lot of companies in the e-bike space. We are market leader in Switzerland, and what I like about TVS is that we are family-owned. We are 120 years old. And we are not only embracing the change towards micromobility, but we are actively trying to be an integral part of it.
Sieghart, go ahead.
My name is Sieghart Michielsen. I work for New Technologies as a director of international, focusing on our operations here in Europe. And we are changing the way people are moving around in cities since 2014. What I like the most about my job is that we get to work with a lot of industry leaders, interesting startups, and all like-minded companies and people around the world that are on a mission to change the way that people are moving around in cities.
Thank you very much. And I am Alix Armer, a co-founder of Super 73, but I'm here in front of you today as an independent consultant in urban mobility and renewable energy. And what I like about it is that I can be here and moderate exciting panels like this, and have definitely navigated some supply chain disruption in my life. So anyway, we've all had component shortages, shipping delays. We know about geopolitical uncertainties. There have been strikes, layoffs, unable to go visit factories due to COVID. I just learned that the cost of shipping a container from China to California has come back to pre-pandemic prices. So that's good news. But I'm curious to know, how has your business and the industry been impacted by supply chain disruptions over the last 3 years for you? Do you have any specific examples? We'll start with Sieghart, and maybe you can also explain some of the structural long-term changes that you've had to make.
Yeah, sure. And what you mentioned about shipping and availability and prices is definitely the impact that we saw the first for shipping from the Far East to both Europe and Americas. That went up in price, just first doubled, then tripled, and then everyone thought it couldn't get up anymore, and it still went up. Along with the availability of not only the pricing of the shipping, but also the availability of the vessels and the shipping containers, etc., and everything that came with it. And structural changes that we did, obviously, one of the, as our company is producing two-wheelers, electric two-wheelers that are come fully assembled and ready to ride, obviously we looked into optimizing packaging and trying to fit more products in one container, accelerating internal projects. If it comes to CKD, SKD, we're all accelerated because of that, as well as working with our partners in each of the regions to try to bulk shipments, to plan seasonal, to combine shipments into more logical, and trying to take advantage of lower shipping prices in that way.
Sieghart, Avrath, have you seen the same things?
I mean, absolutely. The last 2-3 years have been just crazy dynamic. I think a lot of my hair became gray only in the last 3 years managing those supply chains. But I think two aspects are very important. The first one is, what have we actually learned from it, right? Because this won't be the last crisis. The next one will certainly come. So we as TVS, being a large corporation, we are really preparing for this. And the second thing is, and this we're doing actually non-stop since traveling is allowed again, all our teams are really at the suppliers. We have built up quality teams, supply management teams who are actively in the factories with our suppliers, managing everything. And obviously, as TVS, we are also in a lucky position that we also have an internal logistics company, which is now even more being strengthened. And this is what we've done. And it's we're just happy that it's more or less over.
Yes, and Anna, I see you're laughing. Your company is so new. Maybe you haven't had these experiences yet. But it seems like the concept of your company was entirely designed around these types of issues and sourcing difficulties. Is that right?
Yes. We kind of changed into that concept during COVID. It's not just because of COVID. It's mainly because COVID showed how under-digitalized the procurement process in the industry is. So that's when these kind of dependencies and these vulnerabilities were really exposed. So we decided we want to do something about it. And we actually spoke to loads of industry experts, obviously said the same thing. And the two trends I see right now happening is really around localization. So a lot of production componentry is moved back to Europe, and then dual supply. So let's be honest, it's never going to be Europe only, but diversifying your supplier base, and on the other side, also diversifying your customer base is becoming more and more important. And what I find really interesting, what you guys just said that you do internally as a big company, we basically try to do for smaller companies in a group, like doing these kind of efficiency gains when you do stuff together. So collaboration really is the way forward.
And what about tariffs and Brexit, anti-dumping measures? Have those impacted your business, Avrath? I think you had some...
Yes, obviously it has. I mean, our European business is located in or headquartered in Switzerland and in Zurich. So the anti-dumping, as for Switzerland at least, on the e-bike business doesn't affect us too much. But what we're currently looking at is into localization in Europe and also building up an Indian e-bike ecosystem with a full supply chain. And I think with the power of TVS, this is possible. But this will take some time. So we are preparing, like I mentioned before, we are preparing actually if there's a potential next crisis.
Do you have any idea where to start?
Well, the next crisis, you mean? Or, well, I think you just have to look into geopolitics, especially in the bike business, and you have to look Far East. Then you, I think, need to do your homework.
Okay, exciting. Sieghart.
Quite a similar story at New Technologies, where we are actively working in 3 product categories, where our mopeds and kick scooters are the 2 first lines of products that we launched, and the 3rd line of products, e-bikes, we launched a year ago, where we currently actively marketing this product already in the United States, but we are not yet in Europe, and this is due to the tariffs. Obviously, we are looking into also solutions there in localization of the production, and this will add, of course, time to the development cycle of this product category.
How much longer would it take? I mean, if you have to develop a product specifically for Europe with the regulations, how long do you have to?
Yeah, roughly 1 to 2 years. You have to add to the development cycle.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. That is a much longer time. I imagine that with the COVID pandemic, your teams have had to learn to be a little bit more flexible and maybe use data to help with predictive modeling. I think NOCA, this is, I mean, Anna, with NOCA, I think you can tell us more about how companies can actually leverage real-time data and predictive modeling to anticipate these disruptions.
Yeah, I think that's really where it's going. I mean, I really don't want to throw buzzwords around. I just want to say one, and that's generative AI. So, the data that you're collecting internally as a company is the most valuable thing you have. And if you use that data and you analyze that data, you're going to become much, much better at predicting what's going to happen. Disclaimer, it's never going to be data only. We've spoken to so many people who said, gut feeling is a thing, and it is a thing, but you need to combine data with gut feeling in the end. So this is really where we're going in terms of understanding how is my lead time developing, how are my prices developing, how is my entire bill of materials developing. And once you have that data and use that, you're going to become much more resilient in the future.
I mean, I kind of feel it might be easier when you're quite a young company to be more flexible and adapt quickly, but Avrath, with a company that's, way more established and with production everywhere, how are you managing this? And
I mean, to be honest, we separated a little bit, right? I mean, we have the very established motorbike business and scooter business in Asia and Africa and South America. And then we have the very dynamic e-bike business, which is Europe focused. So what we're actually doing is we're trying to organizationally separate them to have the dynamics in the e-bike business. And when it comes to data, obviously we have the strength of the parent company. So we monitor a lot of market intelligence, competitor intelligence, we manage a lot on the geopolitical side, and we try to triangulate all this data. But in the end, it's just modeling, right? So I like the idea with the gut feeling, and that comes with experience, right?
I mean, and also I know you have the motorbikes, and that's quite established, and it must be nice to have that structure already to help with the e-bikes, which seems more of like a startup vibe.
Yeah.
In Europe. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, what we do is we leverage obviously a lot on procurement.
Yeah.
What we also do is that we are establishing in the e-bike business automotive processes, starting from product development, starting from procurement, starting from supplier management, and very importantly, quality, and bringing all those standards and processes which have been established since 100 years in the automotive into the bike business, but with a very pragmatic approach.
Yeah. You don't want to mix them too much.
Yeah.
What about in terms of design versus build? What are the challenges of designing vehicles that need to align with different global production systems? I mean, with Neo Sieghart, I mean, you guys have grown tremendously since 2014 with 3.6 million vehicles on the road and the facilities being able to produce 2 million units a year. I mean, what has been the biggest hurdle in terms of designing these vehicles that align with the global production systems?
That's a very good question. The answer to that is actually to work with vehicle platforms, obviously to find the balance between designing vehicles or with vehicle platforms that can carry the biggest reach in terms of geographics, specific requests from markets, because we always try to localize our products in the best way possible to make sure that they are aligning with what customers in the local markets are requiring, but still starting from one platform that we can build on. And this is obviously one of the advantages at new technologies, is that the biggest chunk of our business is coming from our domestic market still, where we have an enormous scale and reach, and we can leverage this into modifying existing product platforms into the localized versions that we need in the international markets that we are currently at.
And so how much of your manufacturing is done in-house versus contracted?
Most of our manufacturing is done in co-development with suppliers. So also we have all the design. So the design of our bikes, the development of our bikes is all done in-house, and then we work very closely with our suppliers in co-developing the components that come to our bike. And this is also an advantage, obviously, making sure that we are in that development process together with our suppliers and building and securing the supply chain for these components.
Avrath, are you seeing something similar? I mean, e-bikes, it's a whole different set of components.
Yeah, I think, again, here we have to differentiate, right? And when we talk about our motorbikes, we do a lot in-house. We have standard make or buy processes. And with the volumes we just have to be very cost. The Indian market, the Asian markets, and also the, let's say, South American markets are very cost sensitive. So we do a lot in-house. On the e-bike, it's still, because it's something new for us, which we're doing since 2 years, we are relying a lot on suppliers. But basically what's going to happen, and that's the understanding of TBS as a company for itself, is that also here we're going to put a lot of efforts in components development, because that's how TBS normally works.
And I know it's easier to have better pricing when you have huge volume, but what do small brands do? I mean, Anna, maybe you can share some insights on what small brands come to you for and what types of volumes. How do you help them?
Yeah. So that's actually one of the very first value propositions we have, is that we are opening up MOQs. So minimum order quantities are often relatively high, especially if you're starting out as a new hardware cycling or us specifically cargo bike company. So we are trying to work with the suppliers and be their partner in serving these startups as well. Because if you think about it, if you invest in these startups now and they're going to be growing and they're going to be the market leader of the future, you want to be in there. Like, you want to be the first components in there. So it's a massive opportunity to miss out on if you set these MOQs. So that's one of the ways we're working with them. The second one is to just give the information of what componentry is actually available, having a very easy way to have technical specifications comparable at your fingertip and decide what's actually the best component for my case. And last but not least, it's relatively new. We are now providing an anonymous platform for reselling components. So if there's OEMs who have over-ordered, which has happened quite a bit in the last 2-3 years, they can resell it through us to other OEMs who might not have the chance to normally access these kinds of components.
And I mean, I think you're also helping these brands manage their suppliers, right? I mean, do you know how many suppliers it takes, to create the average bike?
Yeah, so there's actually, I think, one brand who openly says it's the cargo bike manufacturer from Germany, and they have, I believe, 178 suppliers. But normally that's a little bit less if it's not a cargo bike. We did, in the studies that we did, the qualitative interviews, between 50 to 100 suppliers will help you build your bikes across all models. So I would say you're on the lower end of that for one specific bike.
And what parts are the hardest to find? Like, what are you really missing in your portfolio?
So I mean, honestly, right now it's turned around spectacularly. So during COVID, literally anything electric, drivetrain related, you couldn't get your hands on. Now, almost everything is available. If we look at cargo bikes specifically, it's also more about the quality. So some of the components are not even there yet. They're just being developed right now so that they can withhold the kind of weight these bikes are carrying.
And are you guys seeing any movement and a lot more incentives in producing components here? Or do you think it's still going to be a challenge the next coming years? Maybe, Avrath, you have...
You mean localization of components in Europe? I mean, we're seeing it a lot, actually, and the disruption during the COVID time, this was it helped a lot to make progress in this process, and I think this is going to be in all kinds of components. You see it already in Western and especially in Eastern Europe, and also we as TBS Group, we're looking into it because we will localize in all the regions where we're active.
And okay, the next part I want to move on to is more about sustainability. And I mean, sustainability, it's such a broad topic, but I know it can also be disruptive to some supply chains. But there's so much opportunity to do here in terms of sustainability, and it all comes down to supply chain, I think, is at the core, and it often starts with supplier relationships. So how are you managing these relationships with your suppliers, and how is this helping to improve ESG metrics? I want to know how you're using some of these supplier relationships to improve on the data on the ESG metrics. Who would like to start?
I can start.
Okay.
So at NEW, we actually we published our first external ESG report in 2021. But at the same time, internally, we also made a lot of changes in the way we audit our suppliers. Since COVID, there was the need to go and look for many new suppliers for certain component shortages. So then we had to manage much more suppliers than we did before, and they're also suppliers for the same kind of components. So there we actually accelerated also putting internal processes in place that are evaluating different suppliers on different points, and of course, the sustainability being one of them, and to make sure that we can actually compare apples with apples when we are looking in a growing pool of suppliers for the same components to make sure that we can pick the best apples out of them.
And would you see NIO being able to collaborate with other OEMs to share some of, be more transparent with their suppliers and some of their components, to share some of like the costs of auditing, for example? I mean, and more collaboration to kind of share some of these metrics, because I know for any sort of reports, it takes a lot of time to get some of these metrics, but a lot of, manufacturers use very similar components with the same, metrics. So is there do you think any potential for sharing and collaborating more?
Definitely there's a potential for sharing and collaborating more. I think this is something that most likely will be pushed from a regulation point of view rather than the manufacturers actually starting to collaborate on that. I think this is something that definitely is a possibility and should be investigated, but I'm afraid that this is something that regulation will push towards. Yeah.
But you see it also a lot in the supply chain. I mean, we are also suppliers to a lot of European tier ones and OEMs with our sister companies. And nowadays, in all the quotations and RFQs you get, there's like a product carbon footprint, which needs to be evaluated, which has to be highlighted, and that is not a simple exercise.
No.
And this is causing a lot of. It's very important, and I think this is not yet 100% in India, but in Europe we see it a lot.
So you've seen a lot more companies come to you asking for metrics.
Yeah, and it's mandatory.
Yeah.
So basically, if you do not can reveal those numbers and data, basically you are excluded from the business.
And Anna, how can NOCA help collect some of this information? I mean, are you just a typical, components sourcing platform, or, are you part of this new transition?
Oh, I have so many ideas. So there's two visions I'd like to talk about. And honestly, it doesn't matter if NOCA does it or if someone else does it. But imagine you share component level data across the entire supply chain. So you have materials, you have sizes, colors, you have CO2 footprint. That gets shared from supplier to OEM to retailer to end customer. You literally can trace and track the footprint of your component on component level. And at each stage, you can look at your bill of material and you can actually say, okay, this is my bill of material, this is the CO2 footprint, this is the material I'm using, and this is where my vulnerabilities lie, and this is what I might want to reduce. How amazing would that be? Like, I find that so exciting. And then the second activity is really introducing what you guys just described, which is not necessarily happening in cycling now, introducing company-level sustainability data into the decision-making process. So we just want to make it very transparent how these suppliers are performing on sustainability issues, and then hopefully can highlight it as a USP compared to other suppliers who are not performing as well.
And what about the CSRD coming up? Do you think that's going to add a level of more disruption? Is it going to take longer to develop products? Are you already looking at that with your products? I mean, with the sizes of your companies, I imagine you are. How are you preparing for that, Avrath?
I mean, we are preparing for that. We are building up teams. We are trying to understand the methodology, doing the calculations. But we always have to differentiate for which region we are talking, right? Like you rightly mentioned, it's more focused on Europe, but we will see more and more this also coming in India and Asia.
And Sieghart, how are you guys preparing?
Yeah, same actually. Just making sure that we are understanding internally, building the right team to make sure that we can comply with it. And what we mostly see, because this directive is coming from an European initiative, but what we usually see is that these initiatives are taken over quite fast by other regions of the world. So we are actually assuming that this will be used in some sort of form in other regions in the world pretty soon as well. So we need to be preparing for that.
Yeah, I know that other countries have their own regulations or like little small modifications, but it's true that Europe, I think, is a standard. And because it's fast paced. I mean, and it's constantly changing for the better. So yeah, I think it's worth kind of really focusing on Europe as a start. But what other and future disruptions do you see coming up that you're getting ready for? Do you see another pandemic, or what insights can you share on how to better prepare for what's coming up next? Avrath?
I mean, I think for us, it's really preparing on localization. That's the most important, because you will have everywhere regional disruptions, conflicts, whatsoever. And it's all about mitigating risks, right? And being prepared, and you will always have risks, but the question is, how do you manage it? So that's what we're doing, and it doesn't happen by today or tomorrow, but we are actively localizing our business.
And you have teams in-house, or do you also use third parties or consulting firms to kind of advise on these?
Yeah. I mean, we do both. Obviously, it depends always how our strength is in that region, but normally we work a lot with consultants, and then basically the TVS team is built up.
What about with NIO? How are you guys?
Well, I think there's definitely lots of new and exciting things coming from battery technology. The new technologies that are developed. Also, obviously, the more mass adoption of EV, both in 2 wheels, 3 wheels, 4 wheels, is pushing for this battery technology. But also on the market side, there's also a changing of like different kind of business models that require different way of products to be built. So, for example, subscription business, rental business, sharing business all require a heavy and more intense use of product, which requires a longer lifespan. So there's also a push from the market, from the commercial side, that is actually asking for these kind of innovations to make sure that products are lasting longer and new technologies are introduced to help that.
Yeah, how can these new types of business models kind of affect the supply chain? I mean, Anna, you guys still straightforward, but are you looking into, providing subscriptions, or how are you preparing for these different business models?
I actually think it's quite exciting when you think about the subscription on the component level. You've seen it around. I think there's tires, there's a few different motors, and obviously batteries done as subscription. But now imagine every single component supplier would also do subscription of components to their OEM customers. I haven't thought it 100% through. It's an idea I've had and I've been kind of mulling about, but we would basically build the digital infrastructure to enable that. Because if you actually, as a component supplier, do subscription, you actually understand how your components are used. You understand how customers are treating it, in what kind of types of vehicles it ends up, and you can also build a fully circular chain. You can take them back, you can recycle them, you can use them again. How cool is that?
I think the most notable current supplier already doing that is the blue tires you see here from Swapfiets. So I think that's a great achievement. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, we're looking at tires, but batteries, frame. Well, I don't know, maybe not frames, but.
But imagine, actually, why not? Why not? Mm-hmm. Why not take them back and then use them again?
Yeah, there's less risk, and you can just think entirely different. All right, we're coming towards the end, but if you have any last thoughts, last comments you want to share, maybe biggest opportunities you see right now in the markets for supply chain or your business, would you like to share, Avrath?
I mean, for us as TVS company, and also I think for me personally, being a global company, we want to make micromobility affordable for everyone globally, and that will only happen through innovation, through engineering, and through managing supply chains.
Yeah, Sieghart?
For us, it's for us as well. I think as a company that is active in different product categories, but still very much around this last mile. Small mobility vehicles ranging from mopeds to larger motorcycles to kick scooters. Also, really trying to change the way people move around in cities. It's with these new business models that we actually have been supporting since they started with sharing subscription and everything. We are very excited to move forward and continue to be at the forefront of changing the way people move around, together with partners that try to disrupt and innovate in that space at the same time.
Any new ideas on disrupting the supply chain, Anna?
I mean, I'm all about processes and data, and I think we all see where processes are heading. It's AI that can really just take all the operations out of it so that you can focus on strategy. So I think prompt-based ERP systems, prompt-based procurement systems, just literally all the information you have on your fingertips and being able to use it, that's super exciting.
Yeah. No, I think we're in a good business. All right. Thank you very much, everyone,
Thanks,
and the
Alex.
audience.
Thank
Enjoy
you.
the rest of the show.
Thank you.
Thanks.